Episode 3 begins with us on the road again, this time from Moss Point, Mississippi to Lake Fauci State Park in Louisiana. Most people don't think of this part of the country as being all that scenic, but we just love to see how the landscape changes as you travel from one state to another, regardless of where you are in the country. This drive was filled with views of the Gulf Coast, marshlands, and the bayous of Louisiana. We decided to stop at Lake Fauci on our way to Texas, mostly because of its proximity to Mobile, Alabama, where we stayed the previous night. Before leaving for our trip, we decided it would be best to only drive around 200 to 250 miles between stops. That way we wouldn't have to drive more than 5 hours at a time, and therefore we would not have to arrive at a new location after dark. Unfortunately, we underestimated how much time it would take us to travel 250 miles. With all our stops for fuel, snacks, and potty breaks, it takes us way longer than Google Maps says it should. This was the case again here as we left the Gator Ranch in Mississippi much later than we expected and didn't arrive in Lake Fauci until after dark. We woke up the next morning to the sights and sounds of the swamps of Louisiana. Because it was just a quick pit stop between Mississippi and Texas, we were back on the road again by 10 a.m. Even though our stay there was quite short, the park is in a really neat place. It is truly located in the middle of the bayou. Surrounded by marshland and swamps on all sides, it is the definition of seclusion. The park features campsites, cabins, and picnic areas for overnight stays and day trips. Its serene ambiance and abundant wildlife make it a popular destination for nature lovers and outdoor enthusiasts. So we just stopped here at Love's to fuel up. We're on the way to Houston. We stayed the night last night in Louisiana. We got there about 7 and had to back into a pretty tight site in the dark, so that was a little challenging, but we're on the road again, and we'll let you guys know when we get there. Good morning from Houston, Texas. We're actually staying at Eric and Jay's RV Resort here in Houston. We're on the south side of Houston. Got a little schoolwork done this morning. Misty and I went over to the on-site fitness center, got a little workout in, and now we're headed over to an oil rig museum. It's called Ocean Star, and it's down in Galveston, Texas. So we're going to check it out. I think it'll be pretty interesting. The Ocean Star Offshore Drilling Rig and Museum is a retired oil rig that has been converted to a museum to educate visitors about the offshore oil and gas industry. The exhibit offers a fascinating glimpse into the technology, history, and environmental aspects of offshore drilling. Visitors can explore the various levels of the rig, including the drilling floor, living quarters, and the helipad. Brittany even decided to do a quick change into one of the roughneck uniforms just for fun. I was especially interested in this museum after having seen the movie Deepwater Horizon about the oil rig that exploded in the Gulf of Mexico back in 2010. When you're standing on an actual oil rig, you can really imagine what it must have been like for all those men and women who went through such a traumatic event. If you're ever in the Galveston area, you should definitely check it out. After touring the oil rig, we spent a little time walking around historic seaport area of Galveston. There was a really cool bald eagle art exhibit that was constructed entirely from plastic debris that is washed up on America's beaches. The intent of the sculpture was to make people aware of how much plastic pollution is found in our oceans and waterways. It definitely got our attention. We also saw a massive yacht docked nearby, which was pretty awesome to see up close. We were hoping to get an invitation to come aboard, but that didn't happen. So we headed back to our campground, but not before making a dinner stop at our new favorite restaurant chain, Cheddar's. Anyone who knows Blakely knows how much he loves Apple products. He already has a Mac computer, Apple Watch, and iPhone, but his new fascination is with Apple's latest product, the Apple Vision Pro. Apple Vision Pro is Apple's entry into the world of virtual reality and encompasses their first 3D camera. It is a pretty crazy product to experience and can only be done at specifically designated Apple stores and by appointment only. The Apple Store at the Galleria Mall in Houston happens to be one of those locations, and since we were in the area, Blakely was very excited to check it out. After leaving the Houston area, we moved on to the hill country of Texas, but not before picking up a little refreshment for the road. Good morning from just outside of Canyon Lake, Texas. We're about halfway between San Antonio and Austin, Texas. We're at a campground called Camp Femfo, and let me tell you, it is pretty awesome. This is probably the nicest campground we've stayed at so far. It's got all the amenities, water park for the kids, big pools. They're working on a zip line. It's got a country store. I mean, this is pretty high living when it comes to camping. There's lots of trees here, which is really nice. Our campsite in particular has a beautiful oak tree shading it from overhead. I'm going to walk up on the hill here just so you can get a better view of what things look like. Lots of large sites. You see a lot of fifth wheels and motorhomes here in this campground. They definitely cater to larger rigs if that's something you're concerned about. With our fifth wheel, we're 43 feet long, so we definitely have to look for larger sites, and this place is ready for it. We were recommended to come here by some friends of ours, and we just love it. It's beautiful, sunny day today. We're going to head down into downtown San Antonio, and we're excited about the Riverwalk. Our first stop in downtown San Antonio was the Alamo. The Alamo is best known for the battle that took place there during the Texas Revolution. In 1836, a small group of about 200 Texan rebels, led by William Travis and including famous figures like Davy Crockett and Jim Bowie, defended the Alamo against more than 3,000 Mexican soldiers, led by famed Mexican General Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna. The rebels held off the invading army for 13 days, but on the morning of March 6, 1836, the Mexican forces broke down a breach in the wall and overpowered the rebels inside. Santa Anna showed no mercy to the men inside. However, the battle became a symbol of courage and sacrifice for the Texan cause, inspiring others to join the fight for Texas independence. We were surprised to learn that 7 South Carolinians were part of the small group of rebels who defended the Alamo, including Commander William Travis. This created a more personal connection for us to what happened there. After visiting the Alamo, it was on to the Riverwalk. The Riverwalk is a pedestrian promenade along the banks of the San Antonio River that stretches for approximately 15 miles, winding its way through the heart of San Antonio. Its network of walkways, bridges, and staircases provide visitors with an easy access to the river and its attractions. There are restaurants, shops, hotels, and other entertainment venues along the way. Visitors can enjoy leisurely strolls along the water, take guided boat tours, or dine at one of the many restaurants with outdoor seating overlooking the river. We did all three: strolled along the pedestrian pathways, ate at Casa Rio, and took the Go Rio riverboat tour. As evening turned into night, the Riverwalk came alive with an assortment of lighted features that made the atmosphere even more vibrant than in the daytime. The 35-minute boat ride was the perfect way to end our time in downtown San Antonio. If you've never been there before, I highly recommend it. Today we were at the second largest gas station in the world. Of course, I'm talking about Buc-ee's. We're in New Braunfels, Texas, and Buc-ee's is definitely our go-to stop when we're traveling. So let's go in and take a look. I know we have mentioned Buc-ee's before as being our go-to stop for fuel and snacks on the road, but until you have experienced it for yourself, you have no idea just how big a deal it really is. Until recently, this Buc-ee's location in New Braunfels, Texas, was not only the largest Buc-ee's, but the largest convenience store anywhere in the world. Currently, it is in the second largest due to a slightly larger Buc-ee's being built in Sevierville. So Buc-ee's still holds the record, just at a different location. The thing about Buc-ee's though is it's not just how big they are, but how clean they are, how friendly their staff is, and how truly convenient they are. When traveling with a large rig like ours, we really have to think about where we're going to fuel up ahead of time to make sure that where we stop there's enough room for us to get in and out safely. With Buc-ee's, this is never an issue. With 120 gas pumps and over 1,000 parking spaces, Buc-ee's was built for travelers like us. In a nationwide survey by Cintas in 2012, Buc-ee's was also named as having the cleanest restrooms in the world. Of course, they also have their own brand of jerky, fudge, pulled pork, brisket, bakery items, and of course our favorite, the Texas cheesesteak burrito and homemade potato chips. And how could I forget the famous Buc-ee onesies jumpsuit that Brittany just had to have? There are so many more good things I could say about Buc-ee's, but I think the best way for you to understand is to just visit one yourself. After exploring downtown San Antonio, we decided that a day trip to Austin should be on the agenda as well. We started off by taking a short hike up Mount Bonnell to an amazing overlook of Lake Austin on one side and the Austin skyline on the other. Then we drove into the city so we could walk around and really get a feel for the downtown vibe. Brittany wanted to check out the flagship Kendra Scott store there, so that was stop number one. The store was buzzing with activity and it was decorated really well for the season. After that, we walked around and saw many of the murals that Austin is famous for up close. We also crossed the bridge on Congress Avenue so we could see the river and all the tall buildings up close. By this time we were all feeling pretty tired and decided that a little ice cream would be a good way to end our afternoon of exploring. Once we got back to the camper, I cooked up some homemade fajitas on the Blackstone. The JFK assassination has been a subject of profound interest of mine for the past 20 years. I've read numerous books and watched countless hours of documentaries and movies on the subject. So when I had the opportunity to visit the scene of the crime, there was no way I was going to pass that up. Those 6 seconds in Dallas were some of the most shocking in our nation's history.
In Dallas, Texas, 3 shots were fired at President Kennedy's motorcade in downtown Dallas. The first reports say that President Kennedy has been seriously wounded by this shooting.
Within 2 hours of President Kennedy being shot, the Dallas Police Department had already arrested the man they said pulled the trigger, Lee Harvey Oswald.
From Dallas, Texas, the flash, apparently official, President Kennedy died at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time, 2 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, some 38 minutes ago.
An hour later, he was charged with murder.
He not shoot anyone.
Less than 48 hours after that, Lee Harvey Oswald was then shot and killed by Jack Ruby. Both murders being captured on video for everyone to see. What an amazing set of circumstances. The fastest open and shut murder case in the history of the world? Or was it? I have been an outspoken critic of the official story put out by the Warren Commission that Lee Harvey Oswald was the lone gunman ever since seeing the Oliver Stone movie JFK back in 2003. All the information I have learned since then has only deepened my convictions that the truth is much more sinister than that. I went to Dealey Plaza hoping that seeing it in person would solidify my beliefs even more. Little did I know how rewarding this trip would be because of this man, Robert Groden. He's been set up in Dealey Plaza almost every weekend for the past several years, talking to anyone who will listen about the research he has done on the assassination of JFK and the real truth behind the crime of the century. When I first met Robert, I had no idea who he was and that he was actually the reason I became so intrigued by the assassination. Back in the late 80s, when Oliver Stone was looking to produce a movie about the assassination, he began looking for an expert on the subject to consult with on the movie. That expert was Robert Groden. Oliver Stone used much of the material contained in Robert's first book, The Case for Conspiracy, to help him write the screenplay for the movie. Robert has been setting up a table on weekends in Dealey Plaza for over 10 years now, talking to anyone who will listen about all he has uncovered in his 50 years of investigating the circumstances surrounding the assassination and the mounting evidence that contradicts the official story of what happened that day. Robert has written several books on the subject and was happy to sign a copy of his latest book for me. Also a recent guest on Saturday Morning Coffee, the Reese Boyd Radio Hour. If you're interested in learning more about Robert's work, I highly recommend you listen to the March 23rd episode of Saturday Morning Coffee or pick up a copy of his new book, Absolute Proof for yourself. You won't be disappointed. After a very eventful and enjoyable stay in the hill country of Texas, it was time to move on to our next stop, Waco. Of course, we'll be visiting all things Magnolia, but little do we know how many other interesting places and people we would find while we were there.